Hey guys, it's Facebook Friday, and I have somebody very special here with me. Mark, thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it. And Mark, I met Mark at our post-brokers class that we have to take in Florida for our licensing. And over the course of our 60 hours, or 70 hours?
65.
It was 65 hours together. So over our course of 65 hours together in our brokers class, Mark shared some really awesome stories, some really great information on how he started his investing career, on how he kind of got into the world of investing and different types of things. So he was so sweet. Can I tell you that for 3 weeks I would come home from class and I would tell my husband, David, there's this guy, Mark. He is such an incredible information and a source of knowledge. I'm so embarrassed to ask him to do a Facebook Live.
Okay.
And every day he's like, did you ask him yet? And I'm like, no, I've just been really nervous to ask him. So as soon as I asked him, and he's not on Facebook, he's never even heard of a Facebook Live before. And that's really awesome that you said yes to something that you don't even know necessarily what it is. So here we can see how many people are watching us, and then here's the time, and then you're going to have stuff coming up here. And so the first, when I was driving into class one day, I was listening to Gary Keller's Millionaire Real Estate Investor book. And I had shared with Mark that I was really in love with everything that Gary Keller had said, and he said that, you know, it's one of the first few books that you had read.
It's one of the books I read. It wasn't one of the first ones, but it was definitely an impact book. Great. One of the top ones.
And then so my first question I love to always ask everyone that's been into real estate is, how did you get into it? When did you get into it? And what was your first experience like? And as soon as he shared his information, I really was like, oh my God, I have to do an Facebook Live with you. So what happened to your first situation?
Well, first I'd like to say, in class with you, it was great to be able to talk to somebody young who was interested in real estate as well as investing and wealth building. Because one thing you'll find out about most investors, regardless of their age or experience level, they always want to share. They always want to let you know. Yeah. And it's one of the few businesses that they don't view their competitors the way other businesses do. You know, in the restaurant business or in other businesses that I've been in, competitors are very guarded about information, but in real estate, they're really not. If you walk up to anybody, you might think they're unapproachable, no matter how wealthy they are, no matter how successful they are. You'd be surprised how much time they'll take and sit down and tell you exactly how they did it or what they did, because it's rare that people are interested. You know?
Well, as I was listening to the Gary Keller book driving into class, you know what section it was on? Find somebody that is a great real estate investor and ask them to be your mentor. And then you and I were talking, and I'm like, wow, talk about like things just landing in your lap. And, yeah, absolutely. Faith, and you know, it was really awesome. So
my first deal was back in the late 70s, early 80s, I believe. I was 17 years old. 17, and my cousin, I had an older cousin who was about 35, 40 at the time. He handed me a book called No Money Down by, I think it was Robert Allen. And I read it, and I was just mesmerized by the idea that, wow, I actually could make money and become financially independent. I wasn't thinking wealth. I was just thinking financial independence. At 17. And at that time, I wasn't making a lot of money. I was making a few $100s a week. And when I started reading the metrics of real estate and how I could replace that income, it just sounded very simple. And I thought to myself, I'm not a person that really likes rules. I don't like to be told what to do. I really like to be independent. I don't like having a boss. It's just, you know, no matter how good your job is or how much you like it, you're one bad boss away from being miserable, or you're one company away from getting bought out and having somebody else come in that you don't like, or things changing.
For a 17-year-old to be thinking about.
It happens all the time. I mean, and I've seen it throughout my life. I've seen people that love their jobs, had great jobs, made good money, and their lives were transformed within a week or two because their company got bought out, they were downsized, they were unemployed, they had a bad boss that expected different things, that sometimes unethical things, that just changed the whole metric and dynamic of their career. So
right.
I never wanted to be in that position, and I never will be in that position. So for me, it was about freedom. So I didn't think I could afford a house. I didn't know anything about real estate. They don't have the resources back then that they have now. There was no internet. There wasn't many books out there. There weren't seminars. There weren't podcasts. So I learned as much as I could, and I went out and I decided, I said to my girlfriend, look, I can't afford to buy a house, so let's go to North Carolina and buy an acre of land or 5 acres or whatever. We probably could afford that. So we got in the car one day, started driving north, and we saw a billboard in Delray Beach, houses for sale, new development, 2 left. So we decided to take a little.
That's not a sign.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it is.
So we decided to get off the exit, and we went to this little development, talked to the person who we thought was a sales agent, turned out to be the builder and his wife, and said, yeah, they had 2 left, and if you were interested, they would help us get the financing. So we looked at it. We said, well, we weren't interested in living there. It was 30, 40 miles away, but we would like to rent it out. They said, well, that's great, because we'll rent it from you. We're building a condominium complex, and we need a place to stay in this area. So we wound up making a deal. They gave us a second mortgage, help with the financing. They rented the house for 3 years. They paid every first of the month, never had to chase them for rent. And it was a pretty cool experience. We learned a lot, and we wound up buying our first house.
Were you nervous, or was it something that you were just totally?
I was probably a little bit overconfident, and I didn't know what I didn't know. So I wasn't nervous. I was excited. And I just thought I'd be on my way. I wasn't even thinking about the metric or how much money I was going to make. I mean, I knew that I had positive cash flow. That's all I cared about. But I wasn't thinking about, future repairs, because the house was new. So I got lucky in that respect. And we immediately started looking for a second house. I wound up buying a second house within another 6 months. And then we moved into that one and started renovating it, and then wound up renting that out as well. So that's how I got started. But one of the things that I learned, I did have one bad experience that was a little bit tough at the beginning, which with the second house, when I rented it out, I got a very, very bad professional tenant who I wound up having to evict. I didn't even know what eviction was at the time. And they didn't pay rent, wouldn't return my phone calls. So I was told by someone, why don't you just go take the front door off? Because I guess that's what they used to do. Years before me, when someone didn't pay their rent, they would go take the front door off. Well, the police don't allow you to do that anymore. I found that out the hard way. They told me to get the hell off my property. So they said, you need to go to court. I said, why do I have to go to court? It's my house. Well, so I learned how to evict somebody at a very early point in my real estate career. But I also learned the importance of picking good tenants, where I just wanted to get somebody to pay rent. I didn't realize that you need to do background checks and things like that. So sometimes you learn by your mistakes, but now there's so much information out there. I don't have to leave my computer to do a background check or to check somebody out or to check out a property or to do comps or any of that stuff.
No, absolutely. I think Gary Keller's book here, the Millionaire Real Estate book, he talks about knowing your criteria, knowing what you want to buy, how you want to buy it, and that's something that you develop over time. And I've heard you mention it before in our broker's class. What are some of the things that you have for your criteria?
I like to, I like to know, I buy for cash flow. I know what I'm going to make day one. I don't care, and I don't want appreciation. If it happens, it's a bonus. But if you're a buy and hold person, the only thing the appreciation is going to do for you initially is raise your taxes, raise your insurance, and raise your expenses. So it'll reduce your cash flow a little bit. So when people are scared about buying real estate because what happens if the values go down, I don't care. I hope they go down, I'll buy more. Because most of the time, if you're buying right, rents don't go down. And if they do, they go down in a very, very small amount if you're buying in the middle class area. Now, I don't buy where there's cranes and this, $1 million apartments on the beach, because you can't make money like that. You need to buy middle class. You need to buy where the plumber lives, where the electrician lives, where the fireman lives, where the police officer lives, because there's a lot of those people. Sometimes within a decade or two, you're going to have a lot of foreigners coming in who have a lot of suitcases full of cash, and there's a lot of money flowing. And at that time, you can make money in the luxury apartments, but you can also lose your butt when they leave. So I don't get into that type of investing. I invest where the middle class is. There's always going to be a need for a living. You know, people always need a place to sleep. And when things get bad, if there's any downsizing, it's going to be those people in those $4,000 or $5,000 a month apartments, be the ones downsizing the places that I own. So it's a safety net. And so when you buy, you know what you're going to make. And if you're going to have cash flow, and if you do your numbers right, and there's plenty of calculators out there on the net that you can just plug in your numbers, and it's going to tell you what your cash flow is. If you know you have cash flow and you keep it and you stick to your standards, you'll be fine.
Right. And earlier we were talking about, what if you just don't necessarily have, maybe you're making $40,000, $50,000, or $60,000 a year, and you might not have that extra cash to be able to put as the down payments and all the different things, and you kind of want to get started, but you don't know how to get started. You have some really great information.
It's funny because if I have two people sitting across from me and one's making $250,000 a year and the other one's making 35, maybe they're an entry-level social worker or police officer, the person that's making 35 or 40 is easier to become financially dependent than the other guy. Even though the other guy might have more resources, he might have more credit, he might have more cash in the bank. To replace $250,000 a year takes time, and it takes effort, and it also takes living below your means significantly. Replace a $35,000 a year job, one deal. You can do that in one deal. You don't need money, you don't need credit. You can partner with somebody. The one thing I learned in real estate is never, ever worry about where the money's coming from. If you find the deal, there will be people at your door knocking it down, trying to get to part of it. And you'll be the one holding the cards, and you can write your own ticket. Say, look, I'll give you half the deal, but you put up the money, you put up the credit, you put up everything. I would do it as an investor if somebody came to me with a deal that I thought was great. And there's 1,000 other investors, and there's 1,000 ways to get money. Never worry about the money. Just worry about getting the deal.
That's a really awesome bit of information. So basically, keep your eyes open and kind of always looking at real estate. And I actually have an app, our Keller Williams app that I have, and if anybody wants it, you can let me know and I can give it to you, and you can put it right on your phone. And if you're out to dinner and you love a neighborhood, or you see opportunities somewhere and you kind of wanted to know, how much is this, how much is that, it'll link directly to the MLS. And that's really great because you can get insider, right, direct information that a real estate agent would see. You can start seeing, and every time you go to visit that neighborhood, or every time you kind of go there, you kind of start looking at the app and seeing what's coming and what's going. And these are certain ways of just putting a little bit of time, a little bit of effort and energy into, but start learning the markets and start learning the areas that you want to possibly invest in. One other story that you shared, which was like so amazing. Now I just drive around and look at property, and I'm like, I wonder if that would be like Mark's story. So can you share that one story that you said on how you were in an empty parking lot?
Yes,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do, of course. It's a story I still don't believe myself sometimes, but it's true.
This is a good one. Yeah. I like this story.
So a buddy of mine were looking at real estate in an area where his office was, over on Prospect Road in Fort Lauderdale, one day. He wanted to show me an empty lot he thought was good for development. This was back 2004, 2005. And the market was extremely hot. And as I said before, I'm not an appreciation person. I'm not someone who speculates. I mean, I buy long-term. I try never to sell unless it just doesn't make sense not to. So we stopped at this vacant lot. It was about 8 acres. And he said to me, what do you think it's worth? I said, I have no idea. I don't buy vacant lots. He said, well, I think it's great for development. I said, it may be. So let's find out who owns it. Let's find out how much it is, and let's make an offer. I said, to do what? I kid you not, within 5 minutes, somebody pulls up, and I believe it was a Cadillac or BMW, a high-end car. He gets out of the car and he looks at us. He goes, hey, you guys own this lot? So we looked at each other, shaked our heads, He goes, so I'm a developer. I'm interested in buying a lot this size. He says, send me a package, and he gave us a card. I said, okay. So My friend looks at me and goes, "We better get moving." I said, "I guess we should." So I went back to my office and I did some research and I found out what I thought the lot was worth. And my buddy convinced me to find out who owned it.
What is that number that you thought? 'Cause that's
I thought it was worth about $1 million, $1 million one. And I told my buddy, I said, "Look," I said, we didn't want to close on it. We had no intention of buying it, but I figured let's take a shot. So I said, "What do you think we should offer the owner? Who knows if he wants to sell it?" So we called him up. We found out who he was. He lived in, I think it was upstate New York or somewhere up in the Northeast. And I'll never forget. He says, "It's funny you called because I am interested in selling this lot."
That's awesome.
So what he says, why don't you give me an offer? So I debated it with my buddy back and forth for about an hour, and we wrote a contract. I said, "Let's offer him $850." He says, "No, $750." He says, "No, offer him $700, not $750." So I went up offering him $700, and I think we settled on $750, which I couldn't believe. I thought that was a great price.
Wow.
So, and at that point, I started making a package and for this developer, because I knew we'd have only a 60-day inspection period, and I knew we'd have to run these things concurrent in order to sell it. So I called the investor and I sent him the package, and he came back with an offer of $1.8 million. So we were jumping up and down saying, "This is unbelievable." I said, "There's no way we're going to make $1 million on this lot."
I just got goosebumps. That was such a cool story.
But we didn't actually wind up selling to him because he wanted the zoning to be changed to allow a higher density. And we spent a few $100s and had a meeting with the zoning lawyer, and he said it would take 18 months. So I called the guy back. I said, "Look, I can't wait 18 months because we'd have to close on it. And then who knows if the zoning would have went through. We didn't want that risk." So I called back and said, "Look, give us a price that you would take the lot without a zoning change." He says, "I won't do that. I've been burnt before. I can't do it." I said, "Okay, I can't do anything." But what it did do is inspired us to send packages out to other developers. And within a week, we got several calls. And I sent them all with many offers as well, similar offers. I sent them all back a note saying, "Highest and best, we will accept with no contingencies, 60-day inspection period to run concurrent with our existing contract. And if you want a zoning change, it's on you." We wound up selling the lot for, I think it was $1.3 million. So we made $500,000 on a lot we never owned. We never had any intention of owning, and we were in the right place.
You never put any money in, right?
We put a $10,000 deposit in escrow, and obviously that never went anywhere. That was it. Never put a dime out of our control into it.
So just to reiterate exactly what happened. Mark was in a parking lot. Somebody drives into the parking lot, thinks they're the owners, says that they want to buy the property. He finds the owner, curates a deal, and without even putting any money in or being tied to the contract whatsoever, the seller and the buyer end up buying, and he just put the deal together.
Yep, $500,000 just to put the deal together.
In the 60 days?
It closed about 85 days after.
Nice. Well
Yeah,
done.
$500,000.
And so it just shows you and tells you that you just have to have that investor eye.
Yeah, if you have the right deal, it doesn't matter if you don't have the money. That's the key. I look at deals now that there's no way, if I waited to have the money in my pocket, I would have no business looking at the deal. But I know that if it's the right deal, I'll find the money, and I do. I always do.
That is awesome. That's very interesting. In terms of interest rates, I hear my mom and my dad have always shared stories about, I guess when I was really young, the interest rate was like 15 or 16%. And I just hear that and I'm like, why would you ever buy something? And their response is always, that's what it was. That was the cost of borrowing money. And if that's the cost and you want to own your home,
Yeah.
you end up paying it.
It was 18% when I first started.
Wow.
18%. But one of the things it did do was repress the sales of the properties, because the first house I bought was $79,000. It was a 2,500 square foot house in Coral Springs. That house now is probably $500,000. it wouldn't be $500,000 if interest rates were still 18%.
Right.
So there's still an affordability quotient that exists with interest rates, that as rates will go up, prices will either stabilize or come down. But the key is to buy, you know, there's an old saying I share with Avisha in the class, if you serve the king, you become a peasant, but if you serve the peasants, you become the king. So, and I don't mean to say middle class or peasants, but middle class are the bulk of your customer. So if you find a way to serve them, you become the king. So stay with the middle class rentals, the middle class homes. That's where the money is, in my opinion. That's where the safety is. You'll make more money on high-end stuff at times, but you'll lose more money on high-end stuff at times too when the crash comes.
Right. So that's really a great kind of area to kind of go into some of your favorite books that you have, that you've read or listened to. And you had mentioned that when you had started, there really wasn't the world of podcasts and internet and different types of things. The one thing that you were sharing that was really awesome is an app or a podcast called Bigger Pockets. And this is a great one.
Yeah, Bigger Pockets has a podcast every Thursday. They have webinars as well. And they're geared not only towards beginners, but also intermediate and sometimes sophisticated investors. They kind of mix it up. And they have a podcast every Thursday and a webinar once a week. They take you from point one as a novice investor all the way through to one I listened to yesterday by a guy named Grant Cardone, who actually lives in Miami. He's a real estate investor that controls over about 4,000 units. I think it's about $600 million in real estate. He started out buying single family home and then a duplex and then a 10 unit. So everybody starts out kind of in the same place. And he wrote a couple books, really good books. One was called 10X. Theory behind that is that you don't have to look at a single deal that's only going to be $100,000 or $200,000. If the same amount of time and effort can go in a $2 million deal or a $20 million deal. And you can use partners and leverage. Just like you use a bank as leverage, you can use a partner as leverage to get into those deals. It's a lot easier to gain wealth quicker the bigger the deal. And actually, the bigger the deal, it becomes easier too, because you have more resources at your disposal. You have a property manager, you can afford an attorney, you can afford an accountant, it becomes a lot more sophisticated and a lot more simple at the same time. So 10X rule, be obsessed or be average. That's a good book he wrote as well. And but Bigger Pockets, they have forums, which are, there's no question in real estate that anyone can ask that has not been answered on those forums. So there's a wealth of knowledge out there today. There's no excuse for anybody not to become wealthy in real estate if they want to.
Yeah, you know, an inspiration of us doing this today was to kind of put this out there, that even if you own your property that you're living in now, for example, going into your second property as an investment is just a very small step into a big step of wealth building. And, you know, we make our salaries every year and we all work really hard, but we're living off of that money. And it's not money that's going to continue to bring us money. So a little bit of thought right now and a little bit of maybe education, reading some of these books or listening to the podcast or kind of getting a little bit more into it will start giving you that eye, will start giving you the feedback and the information and the knowledge. I actually have Gary Keller's book, Millionaire Real Estate Investor, on Audible. And if you guys would like the link for free, please message me or direct message me and I can share that with you and you can listen to it in the plane or in the car or different things. And do you still listen to these books or listen to the podcast?
I listen to Audible. I listen to a book or a podcast every day.
You do?
I'm in the car a couple hours a day and I am never listening to music. I'm always listening to a podcast. I'm always listening to a book. It just expands your horizons. It helps you with talking with other people and other investors. It's like candy. I mean, there's just so much out there, so much information, so much knowledge, things that other people are doing that you would never think of that's available, and they're willingly share it either in a book or a podcast, and it makes it easier. It's never been so easy to become financially independent in this country, in my opinion.
And that's really exciting, especially if you've had the kind of thought process, if this is something that you're looking to do or something that you want to get a little bit more knowledge and everything. I'm here, Mark is here if you guys have any questions or anything as well, now or in the future, I can continue to ask them. But you know, today was a day to look inside the world of investing and show you how, if you've been thinking about it, how easy it could be for you. Some things that I've heard that are some really awesome investing tools is, I know that when you have a baby, as soon as you have a baby, purchasing a rental property and letting that appreciate over the next 17 years, 18 years, and then they use that for their college funds. Yeah. So if you're thinking about, you know, how college is going to be paid in the future for your little munchkins or different things, you know, having the real estate and having the investment is something that's going to help you get to those places and conquer them and be really happy and excited. And is there anything else that you possibly wanted to share? I know I've taken a lot of your time today. And you're super busy.
I'm happy to do it. I mean, I just don't think there's another vehicle out there. I know there isn't, that you can build wealth with. You don't need a license. You don't need money necessarily. You don't need credit. You don't need a college education with a $120,000 student loan. And you can do your own research at home. Many times you can find deals on your computer. You don't have to leave the house sometimes. You can partner up with people. I mean, there's so many different options. I mean, the advent of Airbnb and being able to house hack and do your, you could get an apartment in Airbnb and get right. So house hacking is, and I actually did this when I was a kid, but I didn't realize I was doing it. Now there's a term for it. Is that your first property, you could, rather than getting a roommate and renting out an apartment, buy a property, rent out half of it, or a duplex, rent out the other side and rent out half of yours. And not only do you wind up living for free or better, sometimes you even have positive cash flow, you've made yourself almost financially independent day one. Because now you don't have a housing expense, and typically that's 30 to 40% of most people's income expense is a housing expense. So, and everybody at one time in their life buys a new car. Well, rather than buy that new car, take that $30,000 or $35,000 that you'll eventually pay for that car and buy a condo or half a condo. And, you know, I'll give you an example. A one-bedroom condo right now, you could buy for about $55,000. You can rent that out for $950. You're going to make about clear $600 a month. So even if you bought half of that for $27,000 rather than that new car, you're going to get $300 a month. Well, that $300 will make a car payment for the rest of your life. And guess what? It's only going to go up. So you'll be able to drive a new car literally for the rest of your life from that $300, which will continue to increase as rents do. So rather than buy a depreciating asset, go out and buy that condo, and that will secure that car for the rest of your life. That's one property. Then you buy another one and you use that for another bill in your life that may reoccur, whether it be your utilities, whether it be your schooling, whatever it is. And that's kind of how I segment my thing. You know, if I buy a property, I say, well, this is going to pay for this. This will pay for my kids' education. This will pay for my car. This will pay for my. Yeah. So
absolutely. And you know, what has, as this last question, what has this life of investing afforded you?
The number one thing is freedom and security. I don't have to worry about a boss. I don't have to worry about if I want to go to Vegas tomorrow, I go to Vegas tomorrow. Which I do. Which I just did last week. If a storm is coming and I want to leave, I leave. You know, I don't have to worry about where am I going to stay. I'm going to pick out a nice hotel and watch it on TV. So freedom is the main thing. I wish everybody, and you know what, millennials are smart. You know, no one wants to work a 45, 50-hour boring job anymore every week.
Millennials are very smart.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And if they could take this vehicle and use it to their advantage, you know, everybody will be independent and won't be dependent on the government. They won't be dependent on their parents. They won't be dependent on anybody else or jobs or, you know, invest. Let your money work for you, because no one gets rich as an employee. No one does. It's just not set up for that. Unless you're a $1 million, you know, a week athlete, and even them, 86% of those people are bankrupt within 5 years after they're out of the league as well, because they never learned how to live on their money. Right. So live below your means initially, And it doesn't take long before it just keeps flowing in. Because you can go blow the money as long as rent's coming in next month. But you can't blow your principal before you even start.
True. Those are really true. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for spending this time.
My pleasure.
And really sharing a lot of information and a lot of great resources and different things that if you're looking to invest and you're looking to possibly buy your first property, your second property, or your 35th property, this is a way of doing it. This will give you the financial freedom. My name is Avisha Kassir. This is Mark. And if you need me, you can email me at avisha@sorellirealty.com or give me a call at 571-436-7551.
If anybody has any questions for me, my email is markv, markv100@yahoo.com. I will respond.
You're awesome.
So are you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. I enjoyed class and I enjoyed this.
Thank you. I did too.
Thanks.
Have a good day, guys. Bye.
Bye.